As you find your seats, please join in singing number 368, Now Let Us Sing. There is a low voice led by Ken, and there is a high voice led by me and Beth. Thank you, Beth. This is a zipper song, so there's one word that changes in each time we sing it. We're going to start with faith, then we're going to do hope, then we're going to do love, then we're going to do joy. So please rise in body or spirit.
Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the hope within. Lift up your voice. Sing. Sing to the power of the love within. Sing. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the love within. Sing. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power of the joy within. Now let us sing. Sing to the power. Joy within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within.
Thank you. Be seated.
Good morning. I'm Ken St. John, and I am your associate in the pulpit today, along with Linda Muth, Linda Horton, and Beth Wyman on music, and all of us supporting our settled minister, the Reverend Sarah Oglesby Dunnigan. Welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. This place where we live and gather to worship was originally, and still is, occupied by many of the Hohokam, Akimal O'odham, Pima, Maricopa, Yavapai, and Yakwi tribes. It is also home to the Gila River Indian Community, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, and Tohono O'odham Nation. Indigenous leaders continue to fight for water rights and protection of sacred lands, for economic sustainability that doesn't compromise environmental sustainability, and to bring healing from generations of trauma. Next week, one of our newer members, Sheila Lopez, will be leading the Sunday service relating her own experiences connecting Indigenous Peoples Day and National Coming Out Day. In this morning's service, we will reflect on the topic of deep listening. Now, I know some of us have experienced some hearing loss as we age, and a few may be hearing me now by way of YouTube's closed captioning feature. And speaking of YouTube, let's quickly greet our online attendees up here in this camera. And so we don't miss welcoming the visually impaired, let's shout out hello as we wave. Hello! Excellent, thank you. Whether you have zero hearing loss, a total loss of hearing, or anything in between, you are welcome here, and I hope that we are able to reach you on every level, and that you get good, clear audio on your end. It's always a joy for us to warmly greet our visitors and guests. If you are relatively new and don't mind drawing attention to yourself, I invite you to stand now and be welcomed by all. Are there any visitors? Thank you very much. And online, you might make your presence known with a comment greeting. There is a welcome circle you'll find in the back for anybody who's new and wants to learn more about Valley Unitarian Universalists or Unitarian Universalism. So after the service, we'll have a coffee and social hour and a welcome circle in the opposite corner in the back. Our traveling welcome circle. It's in the back today. Having a friend who is a great listener can be very useful when that's what you need. For example, if you're feeling deep empathy for the hurricane victims in Florida, or even you may even know someone who was affected, that would be emotionally challenging for most anyone. Today, Joyce Donahue, who will wave, will be that friend to be here for you to talk to one-on-one after the service. Online, Claudette Wassell will be announcing herself with a YouTube comment. I'll point at Claudette. There she is. You can reach them anytime this week with an email to pastoralcare@vuu.org. You are also encouraged to contact caring neighbors at VUU.org whenever you are in need of some neighborly assistance at home. All right, now if Reverend Sarah will please lead us in our chalice lighting words, I will go create fire.
Join me in these words. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice. And I invite you to worship with these words from Reverend Darcy Lane. Listen. If we listen, we may hear the joys of the people around us. We may hear the concerns of our community. We may hear sorrow in a voice that breaks. We may hear a laugh hiding behind words. If we listen, we may hear the sounds of life around us. We may hear the creatures with whom we share these grounds. We may hear the engine hum of airplanes or cars, of strangers and neighbors traveling. We may hear the whistle of wind, the tumbling of leaves. If we listen, we may hear the sounds of the company of people. We may hear the coughing and sniffling of seasonal colds or allergies. We may hear the breathing of those nearby. We may hear the sigh of a body letting go. We may hear the wiggle of the restlessness of sitting, the shuffle of paper and purse and hymnal. If we listen, we may hear ourselves. We may hear our own joy and laughter and sorrow. We may hear our own humming and tumbling. We may hear our own breathing. We may hear our own longing. Listen.
Our opening hymn this morning is number 1008 in the teal hymnal. There are hymnals in the back if you would like to have one. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, when we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our stories from deep inside and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the story from deep inside, and we listen with others within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Please be seated.
It is time for all ages, so could we please have the young people come on up front for story time?
Not yet.
There we go.
There we go. All right, come up. Come up here. Come here. Come on. We're going to sit right. We're going to sit down. Thank you. You can come closer so you can see the pictures. All right. My name is, thank you, Harriet. Sit down. My name is Bethany Bostert, and I am the guest Time for All Ages speaker today. I teach kinder and first grade over on the faith formation side. Okay, so today we are going to read a story called Our Family Tree, an evolution story. And it is by Lisa Peters. All of us are part of an old family. The roots of our family tree reach way back to the beginning of life on Earth. We've changed a lot since then. When we began, we didn't look like people. We didn't have 2 eyes to blink or 10 toes to wiggle. We were just tiny, round cells in the deep, dark sea. On the outside, we were so small, we were almost invisible. But on the inside, we had the same kind of spiraling code for life we have today. And that's the way our family stayed, generation after generation, year after year, for millions of years, tiny and round, floating in the sea. But then the earth changed. Land rose from the oceans, the air filled with oxygen. Life changed too. Slowly, slowly, one step at a time. Some cells joined together and became plants. Our cells joined together and we became animals. On the outside, we were squishy and soft like worms. On the inside, our shells had many shapes, Square like boxes, pointy like stars, round like ripe seeds, the same way they do now. As the seas rose and fell, our family changed again. On the outside, we had scales to protect us and fins, 2 on each side, to swim against strong currents. On the inside, we had spiny backbones that helped us move as freely as we do today. When families of green plants and insects began living on the land, we followed them. On the outside, we still had scales, but we looked like huge salamanders. We crawled out of the sea on legs, 2 on each side. We didn't stray far, and we returned to the water to lay our eggs. On the inside, we had lungs to breathe oxygen like we do now. As all of the continents on Earth slowly joined into one, we left the water completely. On the outside, we looked like hairy lizards. We hunted all day and had sharp teeth to tear our food. On the inside, our blood ran warm, almost as warm as it does today. In one of the Earth's dark times, nearly all life went extinct, but many families survived. Ours was among them. On the outside, we were small and furry. We hid or slept during the day, and we scurried about at night. On the inside, we made milk for our babies, the way we do now. After an asteroid shattered the calm and a layer of fine dust settled on everything, we changed again. After the earth cooled and the forest shrank, we left the trees to live in the open grasslands. On the outside, we walked upright on 2 legs with our 2 arms free for using tools. On the inside, we had large brains, but not as big as they are now. Today is a long, long time from when our family started. Slowly, slowly, one step at a time, we've changed. On the outside, we are all people, from the size of our heads to the shape of our toes. On the inside, we are all people with big brains that wonder who we are, where we came from, and where we're going next. We began as tiny round cells, and we've changed a lot since then. But we carry with us reminders of each step of our past. That's how it is with families, and ours goes back a long, long way. All right. Okay, friends, if you would come up to Reverend Sarah and get your candle to take over. And thank you, Miss Katrina, for helping me with the book.
So we're going to join in singing This Little Light of Mine. And you can turn your light on and hold it up real high as you walk out. And if you need help turning it on, come to me or someone else, and they'll help you turn it on. It's got a little switch on the back. And she's got the basket now. Go ahead and turn them on, and then hold them up high.
Let it shine, let it shine.
Please be seated. When I meditate, I do it with my eyes open, relaxed but open, and I tell myself this little mantra: looking at nothing, I see everything. The same goes for the audio portion. Listening to nothing, I hear everything. It's an anti-distraction strategy. I could shut out the visual stimulation by closing my eyes, but evolution neglected to give me ear lids, which those could be useful a lot. But if we can successfully leave the sensors on, but quiet the image processing in our brains, then the sight and sound of someone heading to the east wall to light a candle, for example, or move a stone, or otherwise engage in a private centering practice will not distract us. Neither would a cough, a barking dog, or a motorcycle. After our moment of relative silence, the piano will bring us back together, and we will join in a brief centering hymn, which would also be a fine time to get up and practice a joys and concerns ritual. Really, any time during the service that you feel so moved is the right time. Now, as opposed to deep listening, let's practice a moment of shallow but wide listening, not focusing on any one sound while hearing everything. Have you been having fun with your Fun Together auction items this year? I sure have. For example, I was very pleased with the personal librarian service donated by Mary Kate Eccles. Mary Kate sent me a questionnaire that basically said, "Tell me all about yourself." And that's always fun, and how often do you get the chance to do that? Plus, she actually listened to my rambling response, as proven by her thoughtful reply that included 9 recommended books a guy like me might enjoy. Mostly stuff I had not already read. I mention this now because I'm going to read a passage from one of those books that is on topic for today's service. The book is titled Braiding Sweetgrass and was written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, a botanist and a member of Citizen Potawatomi Nation. Potawatomi, thank you. So this is also in honor of tomorrow's Indigenous Peoples Day. Here is how she begins the chapter titled, Learning the Language of Animacy. I did look up animacy, and I believe it's a way of using a noun that indicates that your subject is alive or animate. Here's how she begins. I come here to listen, to nestle in the curve of the roots of a soft hollow of pine needles, to lean my bones against the column of white pine, to turn off the voice in my head until I can hear the voices outside it. The shh of wind in the needles, water trickling over rock, nuthatch tapping, chipmunks digging, beechnut falling, mosquito in my ear, and something more, something that is not me, for which we have no language, the wordless being of others in which we are never alone. After the drumbeat of my mother's heart, this was my first language. Nature is one of my favorite places to practice listening, for both the sounds and the silences. One of my criteria for a good vacation is that it gives me a break from the noises of my everyday life here in the suburbs of the big city. My biggest auditory nemesis is power lawn and garden tools. Those big gasoline-powered leaf blowers that kick up a big cloud of dust and send it downwind to settle on the next house over. Are you familiar with the local peach-faced lovebirds? They're like little lime green parakeets with orange faces, and they are known as one of the most welcome of invasive species. This gang decided to live in a semi-shaggy palm tree in our backyard. I know, lucky us. We feel really honored that they chose our tree. But they can be chatterboxes, especially when I approach the tree to tend to my garden or do some yard work. I'd like to think they were just happy to see me. But to be honest, it sounds more like they're yelling at me to get the heck away from their nesting condo. Still, we coexist. I tolerate the noise because they're so adorable. I don't know why they tolerate me, but they've been there for years. Another fun together auction item we bought this year was the use of David and Jody's cabin in Pine. Thank you, David and Jody, for a week. That was great fun. We got to hang out with Jan and Jerry Waters and have lunch with Mary Erickson, and we were living in the woods. I believe most people who build homes in the mountains don't bother landscaping. They plop the house in among the existing trees and shrubs. The aspen leaves and pine needles that fall to the ground get left where they land. There's no lawn to mow. Plus, if you go at the right time of year, there's no need to run a heat pump or an air handler. You just open and close the windows as needed. It's so gloriously quiet. One morning, I woke hearing the footstep of an elk just outside the bedroom window. From her gaze, I hear, "Good morning, neighbor. Time to get up." About a half a mile walk from the cabin led us to a Forest Service road. It was a remarkably well-built dirt road, wide and smooth enough for a fast ride on a gravel bike. I was skeptical about how quiet this road would be, but we never saw a single bike or any other hikers, and only 2 cars drove by in our 2 hours of walking out and back. Another thing that surprised me in the forest was how little wildlife we saw there. A couple of birds darting between trees and a slow, silent snake that I almost stepped on before Janet, my wife, alerted me. This was unlike the cabin's little neighborhood where elk, deer, rabbit, and birds all lived among us. This picture was taken through the screen door on the back porch. I could hear this guy telling me, "Now you just stay over there and we'll all get along just fine." That's my Sam Elliott voice. I distinctly remember a moment on the hike when we silenced our footsteps and just listened. I looked up at the tall ponderosa pines backed by the brilliant blue cloudless sky and listened. With barely a hint of wind in the trees, it was blissful silence. I want that moment to stay with me always. I'll close with another reading from Robin Wall Kimmerer. In this chapter, she's taken a group of college students on a camping trip to get them to connect to the regional flora by immersion. She had been doubting that they gained anything more than academic facts until she came to this realization. As an enthusiastic young PhD, colonized by the arrogance of science, I had been fooling myself that I was the only teacher. The land is the real teacher. All we need as students is mindfulness. Paying attention is a form of a reciprocity with the living world. Receiving the gifts with open eyes and open heart. My job was just to lead them into the presence and ready them to hear.
In his book, 7,000 Ways to Listen, writer Mark Nepo tells us that listening isn't just something we do with our ears. It is something we do with our whole being. We offer our presence when we listen. He asks the reader to consider a time when we have experienced receiving or someone else's deep listening, and when we have offered this kind of presence and awareness to someone or to a situation. So I spent some time thinking about deep listening, and I started to think about how does deep listening happen? Because it's different from other listening. When we're in a conversation, there's a back and forth, but that's not deep listening. Deep listening, I decided, is something that we have to create a place and time for, something with a container. We invite someone to share with us, or we accept someone's invitation to listen to us. And it usually involves letting go of our own agenda, right? The things that are happening in our head, the questions, the judgments, the worries, the, oh, did I remember to's, the I agree or disagree with whatever this person's saying, to just let it all go. That's when deep listening happens. And it's really about making room for the feelings and experiences of the other person. There's no fixing, there's no getting it straight, there's no telling someone what to do, there's no advice. Like I said, deep listening, it's a container you give for someone else to share with you. So you can practice a kind of deep presence. You're not actually doing anything when you're engaged in deep listening. Like I said, it's not a conversation, and it's that's a container for someone else's vulnerability and their authentic self to come out. Kind of like a wild animal, our authentic selves are a little bit shy. They need to know that the space they're wandering into is going to be a safe one. And there's a place for silence and deep listening. When you're listening deeply, you don't have to fill every moment with a comment or even a nod or a smile. You can just be together and share the space. And this gives someone else space to sit with their feelings and thoughts. And we can make room in our gatherings for this as well, like we do during our time of centering. There's a place for you to just be you and to tune into what's happening inside of your own self. So this is a kind of discipline for setting aside your internal interruptions that, like I said, come in the form of judgments or agendas or curiosity. I mean, curiosity can be an interrupter, right? Someone's telling you something and you want to know something, and so you interrupt with a question. But deep listening is not about your curiosity, it's about the other person's sharing. Sometimes you bump into your own needs or your fears. So this discipline is to notice them and let them go and recenter with the person that you're with. Now, I believe that we are deeply changed by deep listening. Some of the ways that I've been changed by deep listening include being able to see myself in the other person, which isn't imposing me on them. I'm just noticing something that we have that's universal. But it also allows me to see others differently, because I'm not missing important pieces of what others want and need me to see or hear or acknowledge, because I'm letting go of my own agenda and I'm just with theirs. I think this allows me to understand the other person better. And I also think it helps me understand being human more. Like I said, you kind of connect with that universality between you when you're really listening deeply. And I find that I have more capacity and care for others and myself when I'm letting go of that agenda and I'm just deeply present to someone. And there's something about someone else being willing to let you listen deeply, to show up vulnerably and honestly, that makes me feel trusted. And it allows me to trust the other person in return. And this deeper understanding usually leads to more empathy, which oddly leads to a sense of wonder for me, a sense of peace and awe, kind of like what Ken was describing in his experiences of nature. There's just a way of connecting at a deeper level. And we can receive gifts from listening. Our own capacity for wholeness grows when we listen deeply and when we listen to others. Something new is available, I guess is what I'm trying to tell you. I'm not sure what I would call it. Perhaps it's a new chapter or story about being human, but there's something newly available in those spaces where I just show up and let go of the agenda. And I think that our congregation and our communities can also be changed by deep listening as a result. Because that deep understanding that I get on that one-on-one space is something that we can share as a community. And I think that it gives us an understanding of a more diverse range of perspectives, because we were really willing to listen to someone without interrupting with our own idea or our own agenda or our own take on it. we just made space to listen to somebody else's. And if we did that in a multiplicity, there would be a more capacity for the diversity. It's kind of just creating openness, right? It creates space for us, maybe a more kind of an elasticity, right? A capacity for us. Like we just expanded. So I think we're changed when others listen deeply to us. We receive a kind of spiritual sustenance. Oddly, I think we receive a reflection of ourselves because the other person isn't inserting their version of themselves. They've just created a space for us to see ourselves more clearly, which often leads to us feeling seen and understood and gives us a sense of connection and belonging. I think this is because we suddenly have more access to our own internal wisdom, because it's not being interrupted by somebody else's idea of what we should be thinking or doing. And this is different from other practices because it doesn't interrupt our own wisdom and our own process of transformation, and we feel others are trusting us to do our own internal work. They're not going to try to do it for you. In deep listening, we expect that whatever you need, you have inside of you, and we're just creating a container for you to access it. Now, sometimes we don't listen deeply, and that can be a good conversation, but it can also lead to some things that we might not actually want. Because sometimes those interruptions of our thoughts and feelings and requests, when we do that, we miss important information from others, which can lead to misunderstanding, a lack of understanding, judgments, arguments, conflict. How many of those could we avoid if we committed to the container of just listening? And when that happens in our relationships with each other, we can feel discouraged and disconnected. And we can experience harm and hurt because we didn't feel seen. We didn't feel heard. There's a vulnerability of sharing that is the gift of the person who's sharing. But there's also this capacity for the listener to allow that, the safety of listening. How do we know we've been good listeners? Sometimes when someone has listened well, I experience them as being able to reflect back what they heard and felt when they were listening to me, and in that reflection, I feel seen. But you can always just ask the other person, did you feel like you were listened to? And what made you feel that way or didn't? Because sometimes someone will say, well, that wasn't quite what I meant. Or that advice you gave me, it really wasn't helpful. It interrupted my own process. But we can know that we've been successful in deep listening when we also understand something new about the other person or the situation or ourselves, and we have a new vantage point. Now, I know that my listening has changed something else or someone else or even myself. As a chaplain working in the hospital, I often would show up in someone's room, and I'm not the doctor, so I can tell you right now, I'm not going to fix anything. I don't have solutions when I walk in. This is true for pastoral care, too. Pastoral care is a form of sitting with us and offering deep listening and presence. But we make room for the other person to hold the situation and share their feelings and their needs. And we can reflect back what we experienced while we were listening. Perhaps we might reflect back their bravery, the gifts that we see, the capacity, and just their sacred humanness. Now, I've offered this to my friends, I hope. But like I said, it's a special container. It doesn't just happen naturally all the time, because most of the time we're in a conversation where there's give and take, and a lot of the time we are giving advice or we're showing up. But sometimes it's good to check in with a friend and say, do you need some space to just process this, to just be listened to? And a good friend will call you up and say, can you give me some space, some time to just be and share a situation? And usually we pick a special place or time. Maybe it's a time of day for me when there's not kids, or a meal to be prepared, or a task that needs to get done and I have to put this away, right? This is not a tool of deep listening. Maybe we set aside a whole hour to be together. And maybe we even make agreements about the listening. I just need you to listen to me, right? And you can ask, do you want feedback or do you want me to just be the container? And I've been blessed to work with mentees, folks who are moving into their work as ministers or other professionals. And sometimes we create a space, a container for them to just share what they're experiencing. But most of the time, it's someone else's deep listening that's changed me. Now, I don't know if any of you have had the experience of somatic therapy, but it's a very different experience than normal therapy for me. The questions are a little bit more like this. Where do you feel that in your body? What happened inside of you when you talked about that? You see, it's referencing me back into my own self, my own observations, and my own even physical experience. And I've done something called spiritual direction, which I think a lot of you maybe don't know about, because we sometimes are a little afraid of that word spiritual. But spiritual direction is really having someone who sits with you and asks you questions that take you deeper into your own self and offer you practices that help you listen internally to what's happening and what you need, which might be like therapy, but also could be really different depending on the experiences you've had. So something I've experienced that's like this, it's in a group setting. The Quakers have a practice called the Clearness Committee. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. But it's a practice where there's a focus person and there's a small group of trusted folks who are really good, deep listeners. And they get invited into a space. It might take 2 or 3 hours. Can you imagine listening for 2 or 3 hours? And in that space, the focus person shares a situation or a question or a challenge that they're working through. And then they're just invited to keep talking about it. And there might be long silences, like 2 or 3 minutes worth of just that person sitting with what's happening inside of them and this group of people who are almost just witnesses. Although there's usually someone taking notes and writing down things that you said, as well as expressions you might have had. If there was a moment where I might have cried, or I might have paused, or some other nonverbal communication, they might write that down too. And then at the end, that group of listeners offers back these versions of mirroring. They might tell me what happened in my voice or on my face or with my body when I shared a particular thing. They might offer me a metaphor for how they experienced me in that, like an oak tree, strong, spreading out with deep roots. Or like the squirrel running around amongst the trees, right? So they might offer back even questions, open questions, like, when have you experienced this before? Questions they can't have the answer to and that don't offer advice or fixing, but that take me deeper into myself. So twice I've experienced being the focus person in a clearness committee. I've been part of the listening group as well. The 2 times that I experienced it, one of those I was exploring the possibility of being a minister and going to seminary. And the other time was in a moment just before that when I was going through a divorce and I was creating a new life on the other side. In those 2 clearness committees, no one told me what to do. But they did give me space to see and hear myself, a very powerful and intentional listening that allowed me to see my own needs, my own feelings, and to consider those new ideas for the future without people putting their own stuff on it, right? Without anybody there telling me, no this, yes that, let me tell you about my therapist, let me tell you about my divorce. There was nobody interrupting it, just space for me to figure out what my path looked like. And they reflected back to me who I was. When I was exploring the possibility of ministry, my clearness committee reflected back my strength, my excitement, my groundedness in my body when I talked about it. And they told me they could already see this aspect of me shining out from my eyes and my voice and my presence. But they didn't tell me where to go to seminary or what that should look like. They just told me how they experienced me. And I've had the great fortune, as I hope you have as well, to have many mentors in my life. Folks who could reflect back in a space of deep listening who I was, and to give me space to work through my own challenges and find my own answers. Deep listening affirms something we know deep down about ourselves, about a situation, about the possibilities we're considering, and it gives us space to find our own way, which might be different from someone else's way, and to claim our power to proceed, to act, to heal, to change. And in the last couple of weeks, I've practiced deep listening on retreat with colleagues. I recommend retreats. Great time and space to listen to yourself and to each other. I sat in a Rosh Hashanah service and listened as deeply as I could to the community I sat with, to their music and their prayers, their practices and sacred rituals. And I've also sat on a rock while I was camping, sat in the sun and laid in a tent to listen to the sounds of the forest echoing what was happening inside of me. And in remembering these moments, I feel a sense of deep connection, even when I also feel a sense of difference or realize there is much I don't know, like when I was in the Rosh Hashanah service. Much I might not know about the people or community I'm listening to or sharing with, even if that people or community is the forest. Deep listening for me has been like passing back and forth a fragile, newly born being whose life is being protected and whose needs aren't always clear. I know I must move slowly and carefully, thoughtfully, gently, so that this new life can tell me what it needs and can grow in the ways that it must. And my job is to make sure I don't hold too close, right, and smash it, or too loose and let it fall. I have to make sure I'm not being distracted by my task. And when I hand this bundle over to my listener, I'm trusting them with the same care. So today I want to ask you, who do you trust to listen deeply to you? And whom have you offered deep listening to? What situations in your life and in the world could be transformed by the practice of deep listening? Reverend Sam, who worked with us last year, often referred to listening for the really, really, really beneath our surface answers to the questions of our hearts. So I want to invite you into this practice and to notice what shifts for you and for others as you do it. And I'm going to close with this quote from Reverend Dr. Sandra Fees. She says, "Here's what Unitarian Universalists sometimes get off track. Sometimes you mistake the focus on listening to self with a fierce individualism and independence. The worth and dignity of every person, every self, sometimes gets used to prioritize one individual without an equal concern for relationships and community. But listening to self actually turns out to be inseparable from listening to others. Just as honoring each person's worth and dignity is inseparable from honoring the interconnection of all people. So the attentiveness to the self is inextricably related to the attentiveness to the other, to a greater wholeness. And as Dag Hammarskjöld says, the more faithfully you listen to the voice within you, the better you will hear what is sounding outside. Ultimately, deep listening connects to the spirit in all, in us, in each other, in the universe, and other beings. We are called to be faithful to our inner lives so that we can be faithful to the outer world as well. May it be so. May it ever be so. Amen.
As the ushers come forward to collect this morning's offering, now, this would be a good time for me to mention how much fun it is to participate in the Let's Have Fun Together fundraising auction. Here's another way to have fun, another fun way to contribute. It's the simple ritual of plopping cash into the collection plate, or using the other methods that you'll see on the screen. I'm sure they can be rituals too. You may be delivering your pledge payment in person, or supplementing it with some cash, or non-pledging friends and visitors may use the collection time to acknowledge that the Sunday service has value to them. This special music from Lynn, Linda, and Beth is about to up that value just in time.
Hails our new creation.
to that rock I'm clinging, since love is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing?
When tyrants tremble sick with fear and hear their death bells ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? In prisons and dungeon high, our thoughts are them are winging. When friends march empty file, how can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. This sweet sound echoing my soul. How can I keep from
Go now in peace. Deeply regard each other. Truly listen to each other. Speak what each of you must speak. Be ready in any moment to disarm your own heart, and always live as if a realm of love had begun. So be it. Blessed be. And join us in our version of Go Now in Peace.
If you wish me, you may rise in body or spirit. This is number 413 in our gray hymnal.
Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you go. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
As we prepare to leave this space today, a quick reminder that on Monday, that is tomorrow, we have a guest group that's offering a program about democracy. So if you want to come, I think it's 7 to 8, you can look on our Facebook page. I sent out an email about it. Feel free to come and join in that. Join me in these closing words for the extinguishing chalice. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. And may you find a special place and person who will listen to you and to whom you can listen deeply to and with love. Join us in the welcome circle if you're new, and go enjoy an afternoon.